honestly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Tuesday morning edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We are back, day 2, Stadium Swim, Circa Sportsbook. You can see it. For people who watched yesterday, yes, I am wearing the same shirt. The plan was to not go back-to-back days at Stadium Swim. We had some issues with Wi-Fi at the arena last night. Also, the BYU game ended, I don't know, about 12:30 Eastern time. So I figured I'd regroup, I'd reset, and I'd come out here for a beautiful morning talking college hoops and a lot of college football. Okay, so for people just joining us, we are live at Stadium Swim Circa, and we got a loaded show. Last night, college hoops opens. You know, a lot of teams played. I think we'll primarily focus on the 2 games in Vegas. Arizona, prove it. Torres, right? I told you the Wildcats are good. I told you to worry a little bit about the Florida Gators. Wild game, wild win. Arizona gets the victory. From there, we will talk a little bit about BYU. Did not look like the version of themselves that I think we all thought we were going to get. I actually think in some ways it was a positive for BYU. Did not play well and win. So we'll talk a lot of college hoops. And then from there, we will switch gears to more chaos in college football. Hugh Freeze out at Auburn. We know that. But the stories are starting to pop up about what things were really like behind the scenes. Let's just say it ain't all rainbows and sunshine, except on the golf course at Auburn. And finally, we will wrap. Josh Heupel getting some weird pushback by Tennessee fans. I generally understand where fans are coming when they get frustrated. I don't get the Josh Heupel hate, and I do think it's a very small portion of the fan base, but we'll discuss all of that. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. Make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. We're closing in on 65,000 subscribers. Can we get to 70K before the end of November? I think we can, but cannot do it without your support. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure you find us on Apple, Spotify, in addition to the YouTube channel. Speaking of all things you need to know about the AT Pod, you can see the setup. It does look different. It is because we are at beautiful Stadium Swim, Circa Casino, Circa Sportsbook. Bottom line, listen, when you are in Vegas, this is the place to go. If you're coming out here in a few weeks for the Players Era Classic, all those big teams that are visiting, you're going to want to check out Stadium Swim. I may be having an event here, actually. I'll give you some details on that. But also, here's the other thing. Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. Okay, so I know a lot of you cannot get to Vegas. Totally get it. Not easy to get to, all of that. If you cannot make it to this incredible property that I'm at right now, where you have to go is instead the new Circa Sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. All the same amenities of this great Circa Sportsbook here in Las Vegas, but it's on the East Coast. It's in Kentucky, brand new. This is the place. Listen, all this YouTube TV crap and nonsense, you don't even need to worry about it. All you got to do, go to Mint Kentucky Downs. They got all the games, college football, college basketball, NBA, NFL. Make sure to check out the new Circa Sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. With that said, it is a busy Tuesday morning. We are here live at Stadium Swim, Circa Casino, Circa Sportsbook in Las Vegas. No more time to waste, so let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, big story. It was about, 2 miles from where the crow flies from here at Stadium Swim. College basketball. College basketball season opening set of games was on Monday night. Listen, we had games across the country. There's going to be time to talk UConn, NC State. Arkansas dominated as they get set for Michigan State this coming Saturday. Kentucky Duke play tonight. I do want to kind of primarily focus, though, on the 2 big games that took place here in Las Vegas. And we'll start with the first one because boy, oh boy, oh boy, did we get a narrative and a story out of that. The third-ranked Florida Gators. We had everybody in the media except Torres say, you got to have Florida's the clear number 3 right behind Purdue and Houston. I said, I'm not sure. But you know who I do think is underrated is the Arizona Wildcats in Vegas, the final. What a game it was. Arizona winning 93-87. Thrilling game, great game. Before I get into the details, let me say this, man. Transfer portal, NIL, it has helped keep so much talent in college basketball. I was talking to my buddy Mike Luke, or I was talking to somebody at halftime, and I was like, the halftime score was like 48-45, I think, and it was quality basketball. It was this, it was that. These were two very good teams, and I think the top of college basketball is as strong as it's been, I don't know about in my entire life, but probably the last 25 to 30 years since the early to mid-90s, etc. So let's get into this game. Let's not beat around the bush, because to me, this game went exactly how I told you it would. If you follow me on Instagram, I did make an official pick, Arizona plus 3.5, Arizona money line. But it also went this way because I go back to the day that the AP poll came out, right? Listen, we're all on social media to a degree. I know some of you maybe aren't. But I just bring it up because on the day the AP poll came out, I gave you 2, 3, 4 teams that I thought were a little bit overrated, a little bit underrated. And I put out a tweet that I really, in the moment, didn't think very much of. But it happened to have the Florida Gators in it. Matt, you could pop that tweet, this tweet from the day the AP poll came out. On the top tweet, I said, I think Arkansas is underrated. NC State should be ranked, blah, blah, blah. But I said, for what it's worth, and this is an exact quote, October 13th, for what it's worth, Florida is the one team I seemingly disagree with virtually every other media member on. I think they're top 10 to 15, not top 5. Boogie Flan needs to prove he can play winning hoops. Plus, it's a big step up for Xavier Lee, the transfer from Princeton. Arizona, by the way, is the most overlooked team in America. Well, I'll tell you what, Florida fans had a field day with that one. Okay, I didn't have producer Matt pull some of the responses because this is a family show, and a lot of the responses were not family related. But the crazy part about it was when I put out that tweet, I didn't even put together that Arizona and Florida were playing on opening night. But I don't even blame Florida fans for this. I think a lot of them kind of sat there and said, are you just trying to create some conflict for opening night to make the game more interesting? Everybody loves our Gators. Why are you trying to say this? But what I said, I truly believed. I said, I believe Arizona is the most and I said it on the show that week. I said, Arizona is, in my opinion, the most disrespected, misunderstood team in college basketball. I like Florida. I don't love them. And that's exactly what we saw play out on Monday night. So let's go ahead and dive in. And when we remember the opener of the 2025-2026 Arizona Wildcats season, there is only one word that is going to come to mind for everybody who watched that game. And that word is Koa. Sorry, voice is a little cracky here. I've done 4 shows in 2 days. But Koa Pete, the story of the day in college hoops on opening night, as you can see on the screen, 30 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. And remember, this ain't East Tennessee Tech U over here, okay? Florida, we believe, has the toughest front court in college basketball. Ruben Chinyelu back from a championship run. Alex Condon back from a championship run. Tommy Hawk back from a championship run. Micah Hanlockton back from a championship run. Koa Pete, the true freshman, bullied them. And so let's go ahead and talk about it. I'll say this. Koa, to me, is one of the more interesting players in all of college basketball. This high school class of 2025 that is now freshmen, it's unbelievable. And we're going to talk about all these guys throughout the year. Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas were awesome for Arkansas on Monday night. Caleb Wilson is better than even I thought at North Carolina. But it really felt like it came down to always in this class, A.J. DeBonsa, Cam Boozer, and Darren Peterson. And I bring it up because if you actually look, Koa Pete was as good as any of them in high school basketball. This is not revisionist history, by the way. Koa Pete won 4 state championships at his local high school, was part of gold medal winning teams at every level of Team USA basketball, including last summer with A.J. DeBonsa, Mikkel Brown Jr., Jasper Johnson, etc. in the U19s. But he's just a kid. Listen, he's from the state of Arizona. He didn't bounce around prep schools. I think most people kind of thought he was always going to end up at Arizona. Now, I remember doing a segment late in his recruitment, was Arizona State making a push to the local school? But I bring it up because I don't think he ever got the respect because this wasn't a huge recruitment where he was taking 7 visits in 7 weeks and that's not a disrespect. Like DeBanza took 7 visits in 7 weeks and we monitored it. It wasn't, it's down to Duke and Carolina. It's down to Duke and Kentucky. It's down to Kentucky and Kansas. So it just feels like he was always under the radar, but he was as good as any of those guys in high school basketball. Okay, listen, I don't know what he's going to be as an NBA player. I don't really care. That's not a conversation I want to have. But on Monday night, he was just unbelievable. Like I said, 30 points and Florida. Remember, Alex Conner was playing in the Final Four against Janai Broome and Houston and all those guys last year. Same with Tommy Hawk. They had no answer for Koa Pete. And I think bigger picture, Koa Pete represents something else to me. By the way, let me side tangent here, but I tweeted it. Arizona fans loved it. The dumbest narrative going. Actually, you know what? I'll save that for half a second. Because outside of Koa, he was unbelievable. I think the other big thing, Jaden Bradley, another guy that's totally disrespected. Remember, this is a former McDonald's All-American. Played at Alabama for 1 year, has been at Arizona. I don't know if it's because he's been in the shadow of Caleb Love or, he came off the bench his first year, but he's a former McDonald's All-American. He can play. He was awesome. I thought Krivas was fine. I know he missed a couple chip shot, gimmies in the lane, but I thought he actually created a lot of problems with his strength in the paint for Florida's front court. And you just look at that team. By the way, Ivan Karach, I don't know how to say his name, okay? But first of all, it looks like Ivan, but it's Ivan Karachnikov might be the name. I don't really know how to say it. By the way, the music is in the back. It's so good right now. I'm so fired up. I got Arizona hoops, I got Koa, and I got music jamming in the background. So forgive me, okay? We are at Stadium Swim in Las Vegas, by the way, for people just joining us. But I bring it up because Koa was awesome, but it was a team effort. Jaden Bradley was awesome. Krivas, I thought defensively held his own against that really good front court. Toby Awaka gave him good minutes. Crazy part is Braden Burries, the other 5-star McDonald's All-American freshman, he got in foul trouble and didn't even play that much. And so I bring it up because Arizona gets the win, but to me, it speaks to what I have been trying to tell you about this program. They are the most disrespected and I would argue misunderstood program in college basketball. Okay, let's start with the misunderstanding. I tweeted this out. Arizona fans loved it. I was just going to reference it, but I saved it for right now. Do you remember in the offseason, and probably only Arizona fans would remember this, but there was this narrative, rosters are coming together and Kentucky gets this commitment and Florida gets that commitment and BYU gets that commitment and UConn gets that commitment. And then there's this narrative of, Arizona has not done enough in the portal. It's like, well, Arizona hasn't done much in the portal because they have 2 McDonald's they didn't do much in the portal because they have a guy that got you 30 on opening night on their roster. And I think we as a community, we in the media, and I think I do a good job, but I think other people in the media need to do a better job of contextualizing things. No, Arizona was not aggressive in the portal. Yes, it was for a very obvious reason. It was because between Koa Pete, Braden Burries, Dwayne Aristod, and Ivan Karchnikov, or however you say his name, they had 4 Karchenkov. Thank you, producer Matt. By the way, they told me the name at the arena on Monday night. I just couldn't remember. Karchenkov. I also have music going in my ear. It's like I don't even know where I am right now. But I bring it up because this is the reason Arizona did not go crazy in the portal. Because they had better players coming in the high school ranks. There was not a player you could have gotten in the portal outside of maybe Jaden Quaintance who could have done what Koa Pete did on Monday night. And so there's a reason they weren't aggressive. There's a reason that, listen, if we go to the other side, this is no disrespect. We're going to get to the Florida thing in a second. There's a reason that John Calipari did not scratch and claw to keep Boogie Flanders because he knew how good Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas were. And so I only bring it up because you look at Arizona and it's like, just even the way they're talked about is like, what are we even doing? But then I think bigger picture, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because Tommy Lloyd is a super low-key guy. He doesn't do a lot of media. I know he did field the 68 on Monday night, but he doesn't do a lot of outside media. He doesn't make a lot of noise. But Arizona has to be the most disrespected program in college basketball, okay? So Tommy Lloyd's been there 4 years. He has a 78% win percentage. Not great at math, but that means he wins nearly 8 out of the 10 of his games that he played. When they were in the Pac-12, he won the Pac-12 regular season twice. They go to the Big 12. They finish in third in year one and lose to Houston in the Big 12 title game. So in his 4 years, 4 years in which they've never had worse than a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, 4 years in which they won 80% of their games, 78%, whatever. 4 years in which they finished first, second, or third in their league. They have NBA players. They get 5 stars, and nobody talks about them the way they talk about these other programs. And you could sit there and say, well, whatever. They haven't made a Final Four in a while. Well, guess what? Iowa State hasn't made a Final Four. People love talking about them. BYU, who I love, we'll talk about BYU in a minute. They haven't made a Final Four. People talk about BYU in a way they don't talk about Arizona. Texas Tech made a Final Four 2 coaches ago under Chris Beard, but not under Grant McCasland. And so it's just amazing to me that Arizona doesn't get more credit than they do. And as I look at Arizona big picture, listen, I'm not going to do the whole day one, they can win another. No. But what did I say? If you remember about 2.5 weeks ago, we did our 12 teams that I think can win the national championship. And I did have Arizona on the fringes of that. Because I said, as you saw the day the AP poll came out, I said Arizona is the most overlooked team in college basketball. And so congrats to Arizona. But to me, I think this is just a metaphor for who they are and how they are constantly misunderstood and misrepresented in the college basketball landscape. Koa Pete was unbelievable. Jaden Bradley, now that he's the guy, I think is only going to get better. Probably too late to take Arizona to win the title because those numbers probably dropped. But a great opening night win against a Florida team that I think is good, but not great. By the way, I should have mentioned a while ago, our Torres on Arizona page. We have a great intern that helps me run all of our Arizona coverage. Torres on Arizona. By the way, I had a couple Arizona fans come up to me at the game. Appreciate your guys' support, and heck of a win to open the season. Really quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on Florida because, listen, 2 teams walk into the arena, 1 team's going to lose, right? And I don't think Florida had some ghastly, awful showing. But I will go back to what I said the day the AP poll came out. I said I like them. I think they're a top 10 to 15 team. That's no disrespect except to Florida fans, apparently. But I just never understood this notion that they were a definitive, they're the clear number 3 team in college basketball behind Purdue and Houston. What? I said also offseason, I think they're the clear number 3 in the SEC behind Kentucky and Arkansas. And so when I look at Florida, I'm not surprised by the result. I told you to take Arizona. I bet Arizona. Drinks were on Arizona last night when I got back to the hotel after I cashed my ticket. And it's just, when I look at this team and this game, Florida's kind of who I thought they were. And first of all, part of the whole, Florida's the clear number 3 team in the country. By the way, Torres, still a ball knower. A lot of Florida fans were telling me I'm not a ball knower. Apparently I am, because I kind of basically called that game 3.5 weeks ago. But, with Florida, part of the reason that I thought people were overhyping them, I think it was just a disrespect to how good the guys were they had last year in the backcourt. I mean, Walter Clayton, listen, Janai Broome and Cooper Flagg were the 1 and 1A in the National Player of the Year race. But clearly by the end of the year, Walter Clayton was the most important person in college basketball. They don't potentially win in the second round against UConn if it's not for Walter Clayton, let alone going all the way to the Final Four and winning the national championship. So you lose him. And then don't forget the 2 other guards they lost, Elijah Martin and Will Richard, both got drafted as well. So 3 guards that got drafted, and you're replacing them. It's not easy. And so I always question the ability to replace how good those guys were. And then I'll also say this, listen, Boogie Fland's a really good player. I know we got Arkansas fans in the chat. This isn't the time to have the definitive Boogie conversation, but he was kind of the player that he was last year at Arkansas for Florida. Sort of inefficient, didn't really stand out. Now, I'll give credit where it's due. Xavier Lee was probably a little bit better than I thought. I still think he's a little bit undersized. I was talking to another coaching staff that kind of looked at him in the recruiting portal this spring, and they were like, yeah, we liked him, but, he's 6'2", 6'3". So Boogie Fland was kind of who we thought he was. Xavier Lee was a little bit better, but I just think it's a tough ask to expect to replace all 3 guys that you had in the starting backcourt that won you a national championship. The front court, Tommy Hawk was awesome. I'll say this, Alex Condon's another one. A lot of sizzle, not a lot of steak right now. I remember him just looking overwhelmed in the Final Four last year. Looked kind of overwhelmed on Monday night. Koa Pete bullied him. He had no real answer for Krivas. And so he's fine. He's a very good player. I think he's more prospect than player right now. And I think Florida is more work in progress than they are finished product. You look at some of these teams, like I said, I think they're really good. Good thing with Florida, we're going to get plenty more chances to see them. But I think they got to go back to the drawing board, and we'll see what ends up happening. I don't think this isn't Torres tearing down Florida. They were fine. They were what I thought they were. But they just weren't what everybody else thought they were. And it's one that I got to take a victory lap on. Let's get to the second game. I think it was interesting. I think there were positives and certainly some negatives in the BYU versus Villanova game. BYU gets that win. Final score in the victory for BYU, 71-66. And I'll be honest, BYU, top 10 team, haven't really looked the part so far. Lost an exhibition in Nebraska. I know they were tinkering with lineups, didn't look great. Put away North Carolina, but it wasn't pretty. And they win this game in ugly fashion. But I'll say this, I think two things can be true. I think they could not be playing their best basketball. And I think there should be a lot of reason for excitement after what we saw on Monday night. I would add this as well. I've been around a lot of press conferences and media availabilities and whatever. And I think watching Kevin Young react to that game, the BYU head coach, it was much more, we're happy to have a win with a lot to work on, than we are worried that our whole team is overrated and, excuse me, that we're overrated and that we're not going to be able to meet our season goals. As a matter of fact, I think it's the opposite. I think they kind of think if we played that bad against a good Villanova team and we got to win, imagine what happens when it clicks. As far as the game itself, the biggest takeaway, listen, the two new additions, AJ DeBonsa, Rob Wright, as good as advertised. And listen, I know the shooting percentages weren't great. It was a game that was very physical at the rim. And what I mean by that is DeBonsa, Rob Wright, we were sitting as the media right behind the basket, and you could see the contact in the paint. Now, they called it both ways. I thought the refs were fine. So this isn't like a bash the ref segment, but I just bring it up because, statistically, BYU didn't shoot great. Statistically, DeBonsa shot 50% from the field, but I think there was a couple that could have been fouls, could have been and ones weren't called. Same with Rob Wright. But I think the big thing is when the game was on the line, those two dudes absolutely, positively took over. Okay. It was crazy. Like I said, I was sitting behind the basket and there was one play that I vividly remember. It was right. The game was either tied. BYU was maybe ahead by one, down by one, whatever, but they needed a basket. And I saw AJ DeBonsa bringing the ball up and I'm sitting there thinking, Rob Wright's on the court. I wonder why DeBonsa is taking the ball up. And I see Rob Wright almost like a wide receiver blocking in the open field with his arms up like that. I obviously can't do it with both arms because I have the mic in my hand. But Rob Wright's just kind of standing there with his arms up, and then, boom, AJ DeBonsa, right by him again, almost like like a running back, off of a guard's left hip or right hip or whatever. And that is, I think, who BYU is going to be. And I think part of that is the Kevin Young NBA stuff, right? Is that in the NBA really, at the end of the day, is all about exploiting mismatches and putting the ball in your playmakers' hands. And so I think that's the Kevin Young school of, hey, we got two guys that they can't stay in front of. We're just going to keep getting them the ball, keep getting them in ISO situations, keep getting them to the basket, and they're either going to get baskets, they're going to get fouled, they're going to get to the foul line, or it's going to get on the rim, and Kebakeda is probably going to jump from the foul line like Superman and dunk it out of nowhere. And so that was, to me, the end of the game. Like I said, DeBonsa finishes with 21 points. Rob Wright, he quote-unquote only had 14 points. But to me, if you watch the game, I think 8 or 10 of those points probably had to come in about the last 7 or 8 minutes of the game. And so that's a positive. I'll say this, Kebakeda has not missed a beat as a college basketball player. I had 2 or 3 plays that just, I said last year, Kebakeda led the nation in a made-up stat that I created called cool-looking plays at the rim. He had plenty of those on Monday night, 8 points, 7 rebounds, 3 blocks, including that back and forth where He had the putback dunk over like 7 dudes, then comes back down and blocks the shot into the 6th row. I didn't have time to have producer Matt pull the audio, but DeBonce at the podium was like, I've been playing basketball a long time. I've never seen anything like what Keba Keita did. So when the eventual potential number 1 pick in the draft, the potential number 1 pick in the draft says, I've never seen what that guy was doing. It shows you how special the night was. And then, I'll also say this about BYU. Last year, a lot of sizzle on offense. They just couldn't get stops on defense. They have the pieces to be really good defensively. It's interesting. Kevin Young has now said 2-3 times, I've heard, just me, that I've heard in the offseason that he believes A.J. DeBonsa can be the best defender in college basketball. It's on A.J. DeBonsa. Well, we saw signs of that on Monday night. There was one play, again, being behind the basket. BYU was on the defensive end of the court where, the ball gets kicked out to the three-point line. DeBonsa jumps out with his hand out trying to defend it. The guy goes by him. DeBonsa turns, spins, puts his other hand up, and kept the guy from getting a look. I mean, it was a pretty impressive play, but, KY thinks he could be the best defensive player in college basketball. Who am I to disagree? And then beyond that, Kennard Davis, I think, is going to add an element. Statistically, he's not a guy that's necessarily going to jump out, but it doesn't change the fact that he adds an element that I don't think they had last year defensively. And so to me, if you want to look at it, I think there were a lot of positives. Now, the one negative, listen, you can see on the screen, Richie Saunders did have 16 points. Richie Saunders, the tater top man, he does not look like the Richie Saunders from last year. It felt pretty obvious that he was pressing. I looked over to the bench after he came out at one point, and he was kind of had his head down a little bit. And I don't think it was a negative. I'm mad about, my team. I think he was just frustrated with his play. And so I think that's, again, to me, a little bit of a positive. You just beat Villanova. Richie Saunders did not play well. And I think it's going to take him time to adjust. I mean, this was an all Big 12 first-team guy last year, was in the conversation for Big 12 Player of the Year. And I think it's going to take him a second to learn how to play with 2 other really good players and really good offensive players in Rob Wright and A.J. DeBonsa. Now, what I think is interesting is I think it's kind of on him because, one, you go back to what Kevin Young told him when he decided to come back. Kevin Young said it on this show when producer Matt and I went out to Provo. He said, I coached Devin Booker and Kevin Durant together, and we need Richie Saunders to be our Devin Booker. We need Richie Saunders to be the guy that accepts being the number 2, and his life will never be easier. It's going to be easier for him to get 20 this year than last year because of all the pressure that AJ and Rob Wright are going to put on other people. So I think Richie, listen, I don't know. I'm not saying he hasn't bought in, but I think it is an adjustment for him. But again, I think you can look at that as a positive if you're a BYU fan. BYU finished the game. Richie Saunders played fine, but not great. As a team, you shot 5 of 17 from 3. Now, Kevin Young said after the game it wasn't necessarily the strategy. It was just that was how the game played out. They assumed that Villanova would pack the paint a little bit more and that BYU would shoot more threes, but that didn't happen. They were able to get to the rim. And so you shoot 5 of 17 from 3. I saw a stat at one point they were 12 of 27 on layups. Now, again, admittedly, part of that was physicality at the rim. Couple plays could have probably been called fouls. They weren't. And so that's a positive. 5 of 17 from 3. Missed a bunch of gimmies. Missed a couple free throws at the end. And you still beat a pretty good Villanova team that I think is going to be in contention for a tournament bid when it's all said and done. By the way, quickly on Nova, I know this is probably mostly a BYU segment. I think Nova looked better than I thought. As you can see, Bryce Lindsey played very well, transparently was not really familiar with his game. And I'll say this, sort of a positive for the Big East. We've been trying to figure out, what is the depth? Is there depth behind UConn, St. John's, and Creighton? Well, Georgetown went to Rupp and looked pretty darn good. I thought Villanova held their own. Maybe those are 2 teams that are on the fringes of the tournament. Now, all of a sudden, you're talking 5-6 bids as opposed to 3 or 4. But BYU gets the win. And I think it's a positive. You have a lot of stuff to work on, but you got the victory. And I'll defer to Kevin Young because in the press conference, he did not look like a coach that was pissed that they only won by 7. Only won by 6. I think 5. Okay, the math sucks, whatever. They only won by 5. I think it was the opposite. I think he was happy to have won by 5, knowing how much better they could have played. All right, so what we're going to do, by the way, rest of college hoops, I'm not going to really go through much. We're going to have time. Arkansas destroyed Southern. The 2 freshmen looked amazing. We'll have time to talk Arkansas starting on Sunday's show after they play Michigan State. We'll have time to talk, NC State. Will Wade's crew put up 105. Lenovo, their arena, first home sellout of a season opener since 1999, the Will Wade effect. I heard he got a tech with like 2 minutes to go because he was pissed off. Guy has a chance to go down as a legend in that place if it works out the way we all think it is. UConn got the win. From what I could see, it didn't feel overwhelmingly impressive. And oh, by the way, Tuesday night, Duke plays Texas. Kentucky opens at home. So we'll probably do a full show on Wednesday, and we'll probably have some reaction to the Tuesday night games. Again, Duke playing Texas, Kentucky at home. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got to switch gears to college football because there's some stuff going on in the world of college football. Hugh Freeze is out, but the Hugh Freeze stories are only beginning. And our Tennessee fans starting to turn on Josh Heupel. It feels like it. What is going on in Knoxville? Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody, I am back. Good to be back. Matt, looks like you got a couple tweets pinned or comments pinned. Let's wrap on some college hoops. We'll get to some college football in a minute. Matt, let's get to some of the questions that you have in there. B-Cat says Arizona's a top 10 team. They are. Now listen, the Big 12's a gauntlet. I mean, the Big 12 this year, listen, last year the SEC was the best league. I thought there was no debate. This year, I don't think there's actually a debate that the Big 12 is the best. You got Houston. You got BYU, you got Iowa State, you got Texas Tech. That's a pretty good top 5 right there if you include Arizona. So they're going to take losses. Everybody will in the Big 12. But, yeah, Arizona is really good. And Koa, listen, too early to talk like the National Player of the Year stuff. But, I mean, listen, first-team All-American, I don't know. I mean, why not? You get 30 against that front line. It was funny. I'll tell you a quick funny story. The Arizona fans in the chat know Mike Luke. He's a very prominent, media member in Arizona. I was talking to him pregame. There was actually an Arizona pre-party that I may have swung by. Shout out to the Arizona fan that bought me a beer. Appreciate you, brother. But I told Mike, I was like, why don't people with, what's the deal with Koa? He's like, oh, he's really good. I said, I think he can get you like 18-10 a game. He's like, no. I don't know about 18-10, maybe like 15-8. I might have been underselling Koa at 18-10. He was unbelievable in that game. Let's keep it going. Next question. BYU unranked without AJ. It's going to be a progress. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat things. I think BYU fans would be the first one to tell you they don't look like a top 10 team right now. But they do have AJ, right? And that's the thing. I don't know where Arizona would be ranked without Koa Pete. I don't know where Purdue would be ranked without Braden Smith, but they got him. And so I think the big thing now is figuring out how all of those pieces play together. AJ played really well. Again, I know statistically Richie Saunders, it looks fine in a box score. He didn't look very good if he actually lost the game, if he actually watched the game. It's early, but did you watch any of Mikael Brown last night? Was his showing against Kansas a fluke? So, Robert, we talked about this a little bit on the Monday show. I did my National Player of the Year Final Four picks. I think it was mostly just a fluke. Everyone's going to have bad games. It was the first game. It's a lot of hype. He's playing against Darren Peterson. Darren Peterson's a guy that transparently has always been ranked above him. A lot of NBA scouts in the building. My guess is that he very much was probably nervous. I am not worried. I think Louisville, it's hard for me to pick anyone other than Duke to win the ACC, but I think Louisville is right there. And I think Mikael Brown Jr. is going to be right there in the top 5 draft conversation behind those top 3, and maybe Koa Pete gets in the mix by the end. Let's see here. E to the F and D. E to the F and D says, he says, not going to lie, Arizona and Florida both look great at times. They did. And that's why, am I going to take a victory lap on my Arizona take? Yes. But am I going to be terrified and worried about, Florida not winning a game? No. 2 teams walk in, one's going to lose. That's just how it is. Matt, I got a couple. Actually, you know what? Let's get to the last one from Tam. She says Acuff and Malik Thomas are better than Boogie and Xavier and Lee. Listen, I think it's true. And I think, again, in this portal NIL era, and I go back to what I said with Boogie Fland in April. And it's like the second Boogie Fland committed to Arkansas, the second Darius Acuff committed to Arkansas, it was to replace Boogie Fland. And so once Boogie Fland decides to come back to college basketball, what are you going to do? And let's not even blame Boogie Fland. Are you going to tell Boogie Fland you got to go to the bench? Are you going to tell Darius Acuff, well, this was your role, but I didn't think Boogie Fland was coming back? And I think the other thing, too, is it's a different world now where if Cal can say, hey, look, this might not be the best spot for you anymore. Go find somewhere that's better for you. You don't have to go pro. You don't have to sit on the bench. Go somewhere and start. And so he's starting. But I do agree. I think Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas are better than Xavier and Lee and Boogie Fland. I think Xavier and Lee was a fun player, but I think it's going to be very much a work in progress. Matt, there's a couple that I want to get to. First of all, Sam did ask. Got to ask again, can anything, and I mean anything, stop the Big Pig invasion? Arkansas looked awesome last night. I did get to watch a little bit of that game, not much. Arkansas, by the way, with the big game at Michigan State on Saturday night. We will obviously have full coverage of that on Sunday's show. Tam says, I expect to beat Michigan State, especially if all cylinders are clicking. And to the point Tam also brought up, Arkansas played without Carter Knox last night. So Carter Knox dealing with, I don't even know what the injury is, so I don't even want to speculate. Maybe it's out there. I was busy, but I think that's a factor. I should mention, by the way, Benjamin Bush brings this up. It was talked about on the broadcast. Richie Saunders was under the weather. Like I was told, and I don't know if they talked about it on the broadcast. I was in the arena. I was told there was thought he might not even play last night. He was so sick. So good news is he's getting better, but he is very much a work in progress. Big A says, won't be selling those freeze warning t-shirts anymore. 2 things, Matt. One, when you have some free time, I think it'll be good to maybe edit our merch video. And I'll tell you what, that's a great way to transition to a little college football. Okay, so college football. So college hoops opening night. College football, the news just keeps coming, right? Every week, it's something new. Every week, it's LSU's firing this guy, and Florida's firing that guy, and South Carolina fired their OC, and what about Mark Stoops, and Sam Pittman's gone, and UCLA this. And, of course, on Sunday, right after we got off air, Hugh Freeze was fired as the head coach at Auburn. Now, we did full reaction at this point, but, it's funny to me. It's funny to me because having done this as long as I have, first of all, when something like Hugh Freeze getting fired happens, you have the casuals jump in. You say, all these SEC schools, do they think they're going to win every single game? And it's like, no, most of them don't. But when Hugh Freeze in year 3 was 15-19 overall, when Hugh Freeze on top of that was 6-19 in SEC games, 1-5 in year 3, getting progressively worse, not better, I think it is absolutely fair to question the direction of the program and if he's the guy to do it. And oh, by the way, as we discussed, when you're the offensive guru and your team is averaging 11 points per game in SEC play and just put up 3 points on Kentucky, which I know historically is a very good defensive team, but this year ranked 15th out of 16 teams in defense in the SEC, that's when you start to say it's not going in the right direction. Now, the issue is that not only is it not going in the right direction, but now that Hugh Freeze is out, the stories are starting to come out about just how dysfunctional things really were. And quick side tangent, unrelated to Freeze, but I will tell you this. I used to be, you can go back to even listen to episodes of this show from 6, 7, maybe not. I don't know if I was doing the show 6 years ago, but 3, 4 years ago. And I always felt like sometimes you give the guy more time. If you're right on the cusp, maybe he gets over the hump. I remember saying it with Scott Frost. I remember saying it with Jimbo Fisher. But as I have gotten deeper into this profession, the profession of the media, what I have realized is that generally, when you have a team that just can't figure it out, that can't get over the hump, usually there's some sort of dysfunction behind the scenes. When Scott Frost got fired, all this stuff started coming out about what was going on there. Obviously, the A&M stuff speaks for itself. And the stories, like I said, are certainly starting to come out on Hugh Freeze. Now, first of all, I probably should have known there was a little chaos at Auburn when right after he gets fired. Matt, you could pop up the Jace Matthews quote. So Jace Matthews, 5-star receiver, committed to Auburn, okay? Of course, once Hugh Freeze gets fired, all these great recruiting writers, they call up the commits and say, are you still committed? Jace Matthews, 5-star wide receiver on Hugh Freeze's firing, told Rivals, quote, I liked Freeze, but anything to improve the program is great. So yeah, when you have recruits saying, I like the coach, but anything to improve the program is great, that's when you know things are dysfunctional. And like I said, I think as time goes on, more and more is coming out, and it's already started. I think a lot of people that were trying to give Freeze the benefit of the doubt, they emptied the notebook. And I thought the most telling thing that I saw came from our old buddy, John Talty at CBS. Matt, give me a half a second to set this up for people who maybe don't know the whole story. But, you know, there was this narrative that kind of started to emerge over the summer that Hugh Freeze, frankly, was just playing too much golf. Like, I'm not being sarcastic. This was a real thing. You know, I think he posted his score with the USGA or whatever. So you could kind of feel, you kind of knew when he was playing golf. And so over the summer, it became this big thing. He's playing way too much golf. He's not locked in on the job. Now, to me, what I thought was this. Most of the roster was intact. The 2026 recruiting class was never going to be a big recruiting class. They don't have many scholarships to give out. And so I kind of dismissed the golf stuff. I didn't think it was a big deal. But in hindsight, you can tell that, again, clearly Hugh Freeze was distracted. What I don't think I realized was quite how distracted he was. John Talty sharing a story on CBS Sports about Hugh Freeze's golf, for lack of a better term. I don't know if addiction is the right word, but something pretty darn close. Matt, now you can pop up. This is from CBS Sports, John Talty. There will now be plenty of time for Hugh Freeze to play golf after Auburn fired him Sunday following an abysmal 15-19 record over 3 seasons. That might feel like a too easy and frankly unoriginal punchline about the now fired Auburn football coach, but in talking to multiple sources within Auburn football and around the Auburn football community, it's striking just how much Freeze seemed to prioritize his golf game over working to improve the Tigers football program. Last season, for instance, this is crazy. He was spotted at the golf course multiple times on Sundays after losses the previous day. Then it gets really crazy. Keep going. After multiple stories came out this summer about his affinity for golf, Freeze seemed a bit more sheepish about being seen publicly playing golf during the season. He was sensitive about all of the golf jokes. He claimed publicly it didn't detract from his work, but was particularly upset over comments Ole Miss coach Lane Kiffin made. But he still couldn't help himself. This is the crazy part. On a Friday before a home game this season, Freeze showed up again at the golf course. As an Auburn booster told CBS Sports, Freeze just came out to the course without clubs to watch other guys play golf. People, do you want to know why Auburn struggled so much? There were a lot of reasons. But according to CBS Sports, last year, He was playing golf Sundays after games. Now, I don't know what every coaching staff's workflow is, but I have never heard of Sundays during the season playing golf. And the fact that he showed up on the Friday before a game to the golf course just to apparently watch other people play. Listen, I like Hugh Freeze. That is not normal behavior. And I think it is best that everybody moves on. Listen, again, I go back to what I said a minute ago, is that when you have basically flatline results, right? And I don't even think it's flatline. I think it's a downward dip. I mean, he went 7-6 his first year as the head coach. Or Matt, was it 6-7 or 7-6? Whatever. They made a bowl game in year one. And then they go 5-7. And then this year they are currently 4-5, 1-5 in the SEC. Okay. Those weren't flatlining results. Those were regressing results. And it's not like he doesn't have the talent. Now, I will say this about the article. It was interesting because it wasn't just about golf. It was about the fact that, he frankly, he had two handpicked quarterbacks, Peyton Thorne and Jackson Arnold, and he whiffed on both of them. And it was also an interesting part about, how he recruited the portal, that, he didn't move fast enough, that he wasn't aggressive enough. But I just bring it up because, like I said, I think in my head, I tried to justify, hey, he's signed back-to-back top 10 recruiting classes. He actually signed a very good class in 2023, the fall that he got there. He took the job in December and signed a pretty good class in 2023. Then 2024 and 2025 were top 10 classes. So I tried to justify it. But like I said, when you start to hear about chaotic things like that, it just shows you that it's always a mess. Now, I think you can actually look at it in some ways as a positive. You had a coach who clearly was not invested to the degree that other guys are in this profession, okay? And you still signed 2 top 10 classes. You still have one of the best defenses in college football. And oh, by the way, you are 4-5 with a roster that is mostly made up of freshmen and sophomores, and you were essentially in every single game that you played. Your 5 losses this year, by 7 at Oklahoma, by 6 at Texas A&M, by 10 at Georgia in a game that you could have gone up 17-0, by 6 to Missouri, and by 7 to Kentucky. So if you're that close with that many good players, with a coach that clearly was not invested, well, guess what? Imagine what you can do with a coach that is invested. And so we'll see what happens going forward with Auburn. Now, listen, again, this is one I give myself a little bit of credit for. I really got the sense that DJ Durkin is being given a fair shake. Like, let me even backtrack. I go to Sunday shows. I did 2 shows on Sunday. And I said, a lot of these interim head coaches that are being named, it's basically somebody that there's no chance they can get the job, right? Billy Gonzalez at Florida. They didn't put him in place hoping that he could do enough to keep the job. It's like he's liked in the locker room. He's kind of a Florida legend. He's been around since the Urban Meyer years. Let's name him the interim. The guy at Penn State, it's kind of the same. Frank Wilson at LSU. I don't think, maybe if Frank Wilson goes undefeated and beats Bama and beats Oklahoma, he gets the job. But I don't think the goal at LSU or Penn State or Florida was to try to find the next head coach with the interim. Well, I bring it up because I said on Sunday's show, I said, I believe DJ Durkin is going to be given a fair shot to earn this job. And I believe in many ways, Auburn wants DJ Durkin to get this job because you know what the best way to retain all of the incredible talent is on the roster? It is to have success under DJ Durkin and give him the job. A lot of those guys are there because of coaches not named Hugh Freeze. I go back to the first tweet from Jace Matthews of, anything that's best for Auburn is good with me. And I'm paraphrasing here. He said, I like Freeze, but anything to improve Auburn is great. So clearly he was, listen, we joke about it all the time about a kid committing to a coach versus a kid committing to a school. That kid was very clearly committed to a school. Matt, you could show the tweet of the 4-star kid from Sunday. As soon as DJ Durkin was named the head coach, by the way, did not know DJ Durkin was a bald man. Had no idea. But what is his name? Shadrick Toole. There's a picture of him FaceTiming with DJ Durkin. And it's clear, listen, I give DJ Durkin credit. It's almost like what we talked about with Bobby Petrino when he got the Arkansas interim job. Is that like Bobby Petrino's like, I got one shot to be an SEC head coach, and I'm going to do whatever I can to eventually get it. Now, I don't think Bobby Petrino's going to get it, but it's the same with DJ Durkin. DJ Durkin is not acting like a guy that is expecting to pack up his family and move in a month. DJ Durkin is acting like a guy that knows he has 4 weeks to audition to get the full-time job. And so to me, as bad as things have been at Auburn, I actually think some of this is positive because it shows how much talent is on the roster and that, frankly, a lot of those guys were there. And I'll include myself. I probably gave Hugh Freeze too much credit for the recruiting success when maybe I should have been giving it to the assistant coaches, to the personnel people, to the NIL setup, to Auburn itself. And so I think it'll be really interesting. Now, DJ Durkin's got to win. He's got to beat Vandy this weekend. Auburn's over a touchdown underdog at Circa Sportsbook. They got to win against Vandy. They certainly got to beat Mercer. You know, I don't know what happens against Alabama. I don't know if you go 2-1 and don't beat Alabama if he gets the job. But DJ Durkin's got a shot here. And like I said, I don't think that let me put it this way. I think this thing is closer to flipping than a lot of people realize. And first of all, 5 losses all by 10 points or less, 4 of them by a touchdown or less. You're already close. Now imagine what happens if you get the right coach in place, if you're able to retain these players, an offseason of development, and an offseason where your coach isn't on the golf course. So we will be monitoring the Auburn situation, but I said it on Sunday's show. DJ Durkin's going to be given a chance to earn the job. John Cohen, the AD, confirmed it, and we'll see what happens from there. By the way, as always, Torres on Auburn for all your late-breaking Auburn news. One more football story, we'll get out of here. So, let's switch gears. And with Auburn, I talked about the fact that I think a lot of people that don't follow Auburn on a day-to-day basis thought, oh, how can you fire a coach in year 3? It's like, oh, Auburn's kind of a train wreck. They should have fired the coach in year 3. Well, I bring it up because there's one school where, listen, nobody's on a hot seat. We're not saying it. It does feel like the tone of at least some of the fan base and some of the media that covers them is beginning to change. And that's Josh Heupel in Tennessee. And I want to contextualize everything. It's probably a very small percentage of the fan base that's unhappy. And it's probably a very small percentage of the media that's unhappy. But I'll also tell you this, is that it's interesting, right? So I think most people know, but I host Fox Sports Radio every Saturday night, 11 to 2 a.m. Eastern. We host the National Recap Show. And most Saturdays during the fall, it's college football, right? Well, last Saturday was Game 7 of the World Series. Crazy game. 11 innings, Dodgers win, all that. Rally in the top of the 9th to force extras, all that. So I wasn't able to really monitor the night college football games the way that I usually do. But I just bring it up because, you know, Tennessee lost to Oklahoma at home. And I could tell Tennessee fans were frustrated. I was able to watch the first half closely. Tennessee was kind of in control and couldn't take advantage. There was the R. Mason Thomas, defensive touchdown. Joey Aguilar turned the ball over a few times. But after the game, it just felt like there were a lot of people frustrated with Josh Heupel. And to a degree, I sort of understand, right? You lose at home as a favorite to an Oklahoma team that at worst is your peer, and they might not even be your peer. You beat them last year in Norman. They're still trying to figure things out under Brent Venables. You're coming off of a college football playoff appearance, and I understand, there was a little bit of chaos in the offseason with the quarterback position. But I think that was the one where a lot of Tennessee fans were very frustrated. I think it was one where it was like, okay, we understand that we haven't figured out this Georgia thing yet. And it's tough when we play at Bama to beat Bama at Bama. And we're struggling to win in the swamp. We'll see if we can do it in a few weeks. But this was the one that was like, we're at home against Oklahoma, night game, dark mode, all blackout, and we don't win. And so I just bring it up because it felt like the tenor changed a little bit. And again, it's a small percentage of the fan base. Nobody's saying he's on the hot seat, nothing like that. But the frustration is starting to creep in. But I'll say this. It's okay to be frustrated. What you cannot do is say stupid stuff that is just factually not correct. And that is what former Tennessee quarterback Jonathan Crompton did earlier in the week. Okay, so Jonathan Crompton, I don't remember a ton about his career. I remember him not being very good. I remember actually the one year that Lane Kiffin came, he played pretty well, and I think Lane Kiffin left and he had another year of eligibility and he wasn't good after that. I kind of remember him as like the Jackson Arnold of his era. Like, you'd see a flash every 3 games and you'd be like, oh, maybe he's figuring it out. And then he'd throw 3 interceptions the next game and you'd be like, oh, he's not very good. Anyway, not here to bash Jonathan Crompton, but apparently he's in the media now. And I saw this tweet via Fan Run Radio. So Fan Run Radio, good friends of mine, Russ Bear, all those guys, they host on Fan Run Radio. but they put out a graphic with a quote from Jonathan Crompton. Matt, you could pop up that tweet if we have it. This was from Fox Sports Knoxville. This was a quote. Let me rephrase that. I want to be careful. Bear, Russ, I love you. You know that. This was a tweet from Fox Sports Knoxville about something Jonathan Crompton said from the Fox Sports Knoxville Twitter account. Former QB, Tennessee QB, Jonathan Crompton says Josh Heupel is Tennessee's. Okay, I didn't set that up well enough. Let me start over. Pop it back up, Matt. I just want to pause for dramatic effect. Forgive me. Jonathan Crompton, former Tennessee quarterback, says, quote, Josh Heupel is Tennessee's James Franklin. Quote, I'm not the one to call for a coach to get fired. That's not my thing, Crompton said on the Big Orange podcast postgame show. What I'm saying is, I do think Heupel is our James Franklin. He's going to win us 9 or 10 ball games a year. The odd year we'll get to 11. And that's about our ceiling. And then the tweet says, do you agree with the former signal caller? All right, let me say this. Sure, Jonathan Crompton's a great guy. Not here to criticize him as a man. I don't know if he's a father or a husband or whatever. That is quite literally maybe the dumbest thing I've ever seen on Twitter, which is saying something. Let's go ahead and dive into that. Matt, as a matter of fact, do me a favor. Put the tweet back up so I can reference it. I'm going to read it one more time. He said, quote, I'm not the one to call for a coach to get fired. That's not my thing. What I'm saying is I do think Heupel is our James Franklin. He's going to win us 9 or 10 ball games. The odd year we'll get to 11, and that's about our ceiling. That is so dumb. Let's dive into it. Now, first of all, I want to, again, be fair. I don't think that 99% of Tennessee fans feel this way, and I think there's a lot of reason to be frustrated after Saturday, and I think most Tennessee fans are frustrated, but also understanding how far this program has come and the context behind it, okay? But first off, saying that he is your James Franklin is just factually incorrect because James Franklin never won big games, okay? We gave the stats when James Franklin got fired. Since 2017, so I take that back. His entire career at Penn State, James Franklin was 4-21 against top 10 teams. He'd sit there and say, well, Torres, he won 4. 2 of them came in 2016. Ohio State and Wisconsin in 2016. Then his 2 other top 10 wins were Boise State and SMU in the college football playoff last year. That was the totality of James Franklin's top 10 wins his entire time at Penn State that started in 2014. Josh Heupel didn't even get to Tennessee until 2021, okay? So there's that part of it. Beyond that, the part about, yeah, he's a good coach. He's going to win us 9 or 10 games, maybe even 11, but that's our ceiling. It's so stupid. It doesn't really even deserve justification, but I'm going to give it anyway. Do you know how stupid that sounds? Like, seriously, do you know how stupid that sounds? First of all, 9 or 10 wins, it's an incredible season, especially in the context of current college football. By the way, think about how many schools. Let me backtrack. We're going to win 9 or 10 ball games, maybe even 11. That is the standard right now, okay? No one is winning every game in college football in this era. Georgia last year, 10 games in the regular season, 11 games with the SEC championship. So to say we're going to win 9 or 10 games, if that's not going to be good enough for you with the occasional 11-win season, you'll never be happy. There is no other Nick Saban coming, and part of the reason Nick Saban retired is because he knew he couldn't sustain in this era what he did in the previous era. He knew that 12-0 regular seasons, 11-1 regular seasons were not going to be the norm. And so to sit there and say, well, he's going to win us 10 or 11 games, 10, 9 or 10, maybe 11. You know what that's like? That's like me saying, love my wife. She cooks and she cleans. We don't have kids, but if we did, she'd be a great mother. And she takes care of me and she's beautiful and she's friendly and she smiles and she's happy. But she wasn't Miss America when she was 19 years old. Well, yeah, guess what? There was only one of those when she was 19. And my wife is perfect. And Josh Heupel is a very, very, very good coach. And if 9 to 10 wins with the occasional 11-win season isn't good enough for you, then nothing is going to be good enough for you. And I'm not one of those that's like, you know, you can never fire the current guy because who are you going to replace him with? Auburn had to fire Hugh Freeze. Florida had to fire Billy Napier. I had no problem with LSU because the standard had dipped. Josh Heupel has raised the standard at Tennessee. Josh Heupel took a program that could not get over the hump, and you can't call him James Franklin. You know why? Because he's already beaten Alabama twice, because he's won against Florida consistently. The only team that he can't beat is Georgia, and guess what? Basically, nobody beats Georgia. And so this notion that he's somehow underachieving or not the guy because he's only going to get 9-10 wins, it's idiotic. And again, I just think it speaks to, in this era of college football, we have to change the standard. Now, again, I understand it's okay to be frustrated with the Oklahoma game on Saturday. By the way, for a Tennessee fan just tuning in, I am at Stadium Swim Circa Casino, Circa Sportsbook. I was out here for the college basketball games on Monday night. So if you're wondering what is it, who is this guy and why is he on my screen at a outdoor pool, that's why. Also, make sure you're following our Tennessee page, Torres on the Vols. But yeah, if 9-10 wins isn't good enough, that is the standard in the new era of college football. And if you can get one of those coaches that consistently gets you there, hold on to him for dear life. By the way, like I said, Heupel beats Alabama at home, beats Florida at home. That's more than any of his other predecessors since the mid-2000s could say. Hasn't gotten over the Georgia hump, okay. But he beats everybody else. He's won big bowl games. I know bowl games don't matter anymore, but he beat Clemson in the Orange Bowl a few years ago. One with Joe Milton, one with Hendon Hooker, one with Nico Iamaleava. Got a quarterback this year in the middle of May and has you at what, 6-3? That's the other thing. Listen, I don't want to undersell what Tennessee could or can be, but it was a situation where we all kind of understood. You know, the Circa over-under win total for Tennessee was 8.5. They thought they were an 8-9 win team. That's where they're trending. And I know the Oklahoma loss is the first one that you kind of say, darn it, we should have had that one. Well, you should have had the Georgia game, but Georgia's Georgia. Alabama on the road's tough. Oklahoma, you probably should have had. I get it. But this notion that 9-10 wins with the occasional 11-win season, with no bad seasons, by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, Tennessee fans, I don't believe he's won fewer than 8 games. It's ridiculous. And again, I just want to say this one more time. I understand that Jonathan Crompton does not speak for 99.9% of Tennessee fans, but I would be remiss if I didn't at least talk about this. So shout out Josh Heupel, Tennessee. You know, it is what it is. Tennessee, obviously, out of the playoff mix. I know it's frustrating, but you got a good coach. And I think, by the way, the other thing is the future is bright, right? Faison Brandon's coming in, #1 quarterback in America next year. You got the pieces in place. Stop complaining. Now, I want to be very careful because Tennessee fans are great. But Crompton, I'm sure you're a good guy, but that was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. All right, Matt, before we get out of here, first of all, do we have any questions? Slam Tana. Smart man Slam Tana says, where is all these SEC schools going to find coaches that can win 9-10 games? Things are different now. Listen, this doesn't really happen in college football much, but in the NFL, you know how sometimes somebody will get fired and it's like, oh, they'll have a job tomorrow. If you want to fire that guy, they'll have a job tomorrow. Like, honestly, a good analogy is probably Tennessee with Mike Vrabel. When they fired Mike Vrabel, it was like, oh, that guy's going to have a million opportunities if he wants them. If Tennessee isn't, I want to be clear, but if Tennessee was like, this isn't good enough, Josh Heupel would have 5 offers on his desk tomorrow. Listen, I think Josh Heupel would immediately become the favorite, maybe at every job available. Like if Tennessee today was just like, yeah, thanks for the playoff run last year, but that's not good enough. I know he'd be the favorite at Arkansas. I think he might be the favorite at Florida. I think he could do wonders at Penn State. LSU, maybe not. But like, what are we even talking about? And it's not fans. It was one guy in the media, but it was so dumb, I had to talk about it. Anything else? Slam Tana says the SEC is going to fire all their coaches. It sure feels, I was thinking about that. Like, how many fan bases are actually totally 100% happy with their coaches? You've had 3 that have already been fired: Arkansas, LSU, and Florida. Kentucky, Florida, Auburn, LSU, Arkansas. So a quarter of the league has opened up. I still think Kentucky by the end of the year, I don't think Mark Stoops is going to do enough. So that's 5. You have Sark, I think pretty actively, quietly, at least letting it known that he'll listen to other places. And I think it's because his fans aren't happy. You got this weird Heupel stuff. That's already almost half the league. I mean, how many fan bases are truly happy with their Clark Lee, at Vandy. Oh, by the way, Shane Beamer might be trying to get out. I would say Clark Lee and maybe Kalen DeBoer. And I think that's kind of it. Maybe I'm missing one or two. I don't know. Oh, Lane Kiffin, obviously. And Mike Elko. So like a quarter of the league is over the moon about their coach. Everybody else has either fired him, hates him, or is in a love-hate relationship with him. Matt, anything else before we get out of here? Okay, this is great from Brian. He says, Tora, this is going back to the Arizona stuff. You need to refer to Koa as warrior. Warcat, bear down. Koa, so his mom is from Hawaii. I don't know if Hawaii, I don't think has its own language, but maybe it's in Polynesian culture. Koa means strong warrior. He certainly looked like a darn strong warrior on Monday night in Vegas. All right, I am in Vegas, Circa Sportsbook. First of all, last show from here. I'll be back in a few weeks for the Players Era. Thank you for all of the hospitality of Circa Sportsbook. We are so grateful for Circa Sportsbook. If you're in Vegas, come check it out, Players Era. If you need details, you can always hit me up. If you're going to be in here for Players Era, if you're going to be here for whatever, hit me. We'll get you set up, okay? And also, if you're on the East Coast and you can't make it to Vegas, Circa Sportsbook, Mint, Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. I keep saying it. We're going to set up some shows in Mint, Kentucky Downs here soon. Really quickly, before we get out of here, also, I do want to thank the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres pod, SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. Okay, so I've told you all about SeatGeek, but college hoop season is here. College football season is still going on. Holidays are coming up. You need tickets to concerts, shows, and more. You need SeatGeek, America's #1 ticketing app, over 28 million downloads. And there's two things I love about SeatGeek. One, they let you know what tickets are good and what tickets are not. Okay, so every ticket is rated 1 through 10. Green dot means good, red dot means bad. But then two, also, what I really love about SeatGeek is that they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. If you use promo code Torres, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres, it will get you $20 off your first purchase. $20 off your first purchase. All you got to do, download the SeatGeek app, use promo code Torres. It gets you $20 off your first purchase. All right, I'll tell you what. I'm going to have to go ahead and get out of here because I actually got a plane to catch. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll probably do a show. College football playoff rankings are out tonight. Duke plays tonight. So let's plan to do a show Wednesday. I'll be back in the Torres studios. But thank you again to Circa and for their support of the Aaron Torres pod. Thank you to you guys for your support of the Aaron Torres pod. And thank you, of course, SeatGeek, promo code Torres. Time for me to go. Appreciate your support, and we will be back soon. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblocked.